Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Critical Podcast. My name is Jimmy Good, and I am your host. Thank you so much for joining me again here today. I appreciate you so much. I know the podcasts have not been as weekly as I used to do them, but I'm going to try to get back into it. And this week, I wanted to talk about something that I normally probably wouldn't dedicate an entire show to, but it was something that kind of stood out to me, and that was the recent, full reveal footage of Elden Ring's gameplay. Now, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, Elden Ring is an upcoming From Software game. They're best known for their Souls games, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, that kind of stuff. But this one, I was like, you know what? A lot of people were freaking out about it. They really wanted to see more of it. We got little teases and hints here and there, but we didn't really get a full grasp on what exactly the game has to offer. And I think this kind of 15-minute gameplay footage gives us a much better look at what will be coming up now in February, as opposed to, I think, January originally. They pushed it back a little bit, which, as I like to say here, for me, I say take as long with every game. I understand there are budgets and things to consider, but the longer these games get to cook, the better they come out. That's just the way I think of it. Anyway, for people who are Souls fans, hi, how are you doing? I bet you're excited about this to some degree, but I will not be giving away any lore stuff because I don't understand any of this or have looked into it, so I'm not going to get really specific with any proper nouns because I don't really know them. But to give you guys kind of a feeling of what I've been able to accomplish in the Souls realm so far, I have been in the past, I wouldn't say an opponent of the Dark Souls games, I just have never really seen the entire love they garner. I have played through a few of them now, and I totally understand and respect how you feel after you accomplish something, but I always felt like something with I don't know if it was the game design or it felt archaic, and I think that's very purposeful, you know? But there was something that just didn't grab onto me. I didn't really care about the story because it was more lore focused. It kind of, any narrative takes a back seat usually with these games, or it's kind of left on the fringes for you to kind of figure out on your own or go watch a YouTube video of. So I didn't really care about anything. And the worlds themselves all kind of they were different and I could appreciate them, but I was never drawn to them aesthetically. But I feel like Elden Ring, for me, has kind of turned a corner, as far as the Souls stuff is concerned. I have now played through Dark Souls 1 and 2 with a lot of help. I've had a lot of help from people. And I've beaten both of those. And I played and beat Bloodborne by myself, which was a harrowing experience. But I've not played Dark Souls 3. So if there are a few things I bring up here that are understood now in the Dark Souls world where I'm like, hey, that seems new and it was a Dark Souls 3, I apologize. But I just kind of want to go through my thoughts as I watch this video. I actually watched it twice just to make sure that I kind of had a good feel for it. Anyway, one thing that I kind of recognized a lot, and it still seems to be present here, is that in all the Souls games, it becomes kind of a game of memory. And what do I mean by that? It usually means that, let's say you're trying to get from one checkpoint, which is usually a bonfire or a lantern, to a boss. You can just kind of memorize where every individual enemy is and kind of avoid them. And while those encounters, if you actually fought them, might be different every time, they're all standing in pretty much exactly the same place. Or the dragon in Dark Souls 1 will show up typically the same way in the beginning until later on every time. Or I think. So again, remember, I would not say I'm a huge fan, so if I screw up on any of these things where you're like, actually the dragon is different each time. But it just felt like it was pretty scripted. There is a moment really early on in this game, the gameplay footage, I should say, where you are riding on your horse or ram or whatever it is, which, by the way, is really cool. That's a really nice touch, especially for a big open world like this. And not that Souls games haven't had kind of pseudo-open worlds in the past, but it's more so, at least to me, felt like a bunch of connected corridors. This really feels truly open in a bigger way than it ever has. But you're kind of riding around, and a dragon swoops down and attacks this kind of gathering around a bonfire with some enemies. And that, is pretty, like a kind of a scripted thing, right? But because it's out in the open, to me, it just feels more dynamic. And I think that's so interesting. And there's like this boss fight that you didn't recognize or maybe know was coming, and then it just happens. And I'm not sure about this, but because it's open world, like maybe, like if you don't want to fight that thing, maybe you can just run away. And you're like, you know what, dragon? No thanks. I'm not really interested in fighting you right now. Which I think is pretty interesting. But, we get to watch our knight or whomever, the tarnished. There we go. I use one proper noun. Here today fight this dragon a little bit, which was cool. But I really appreciate that. And then kind of continuing with that, with like kind of random moments in the open world, when you go and you meet Alexander. Man, I said no proper nouns. I should say the giant pot urn guy or whatever. Him just kind of being out in the open makes it feel more like Breath of the Wild or Red Dead Redemption 2 or other big open world games. And for me, that stuff is some of the most rewarding and fun and most memorable things that a game has to offer. Because obviously there are moments where, they want to have this big reveal or there's a story moment or whatever that might be. But it's those little things where you kind of just like roaming around in the wilderness and you come across a situation and you're like, well, what's this? Oh, okay. You interact with somebody or something that, was put there purposefully. Yes, but who knows when you were going to stumble across it? Might be in the first couple hours, might not be until, hour 25 or 30 or whatever. I just think that's so cool. And it just makes the world feel more authentic and more lived in than I think I've ever really felt like with any of these other Souls games. Like, it feels less like kind of, you guys know I'm a Disney fan, probably, if you're listening to this, but it feels less like an attraction. It feels less like an on-rails attraction where you kind of, what's coming every time, which can be amazing and great. But in video games, I think I love the dynamic nature of how things can shift and be attacked differently versus just, yep, everybody knows this part up here sucks because this hallway's got two guys here and one guy's got a bow and arrow up here, like that kind of thing. It doesn't seem like that is going to be as prevalent in the open world, maybe in the dungeons, but we'll get back to that in a little bit. Another thing I also really appreciate is that the world is populated with animals, like regular animals, not like terrifying, weird crows of death. There seems to be some scary animals that fight you too. Like one of the birds has got like some, I don't know, equipped talons or like these metallic talons or these like bracers or something. But it looks like there's just like animals out in the world, maybe for hunting or just, just to be part of the landscape. And again, that stuff makes it feel more like a living, breathing world versus just like a haunted house you walk through and every time where the jump scares are eventually, right? And to me, that is really cool, and I appreciate that a lot. And while the claustrophobic feeling, I think, will come back into stuff we talk on later on, this more open feeling and kind of being able to attack situations in more of an organic or dynamic way, I keep saying that, but I think is really cool. I really appreciate that. And also, there's like a moment, too, where we see our kind of the character we're following, our protagonist, is kind of looking down at like a little kind of convoy that's stopped or like a little cart. And there's some guards down there and it's kind of specking it out first before attacking and kind of preparing before you attack. And I thought that was so cool. It reminds me a lot of Far Cry. I know I put in my notes, it's like Far Cry-esque outposts. And some people probably are like, oh man, I do not want to deal with that. But I've always loved that in Far Cry or Assassin's Creed where they give you like a space out in the open world that you can approach from many different angles and kind of decide how you want to approach it. And I think that's really great. This next thing I want to talk about maybe was in Dark Souls 3. I don't know. But I know from the older games, like 1 and I think 2, with the bow, like a bow and arrow, because our protagonist kind of sneaks down there. He locks on from like a third person point of view, but it doesn't like go over the shoulder. It just kind of is like a lock on that I think it's been in the old games. Yeah, I think actually it has been in 2. Maybe it's been in 1 as well. But it looked like it was more efficient, and it looked like, I don't know, it just looked better to me. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe, I don't know. But using that like making a special arrow to knock a guy down and then run up and kind of stab him when he's on the ground. I thought was cool. And using stealth in this game, which I don't really remember using too much of in the older games. There are like, stuff you sneak past, but like it's not usually like you snuck up on a person and snuck up on another, enemy and another enemy. Like, I thought that was kind of cool. So I was excited to see a little bit of that. So again, a little more, it's kind of getting to that Assassin's Creed Far Cry stuff where I'm like, okay, I gotta sneak up on these guys and take them out, and that might be good, as opposed to having 4 or 5 of them attack me simultaneously, which I don't want to do. But then we get into this moment, which I really love, where we start to see like magic built into the weapons. And magic is one of the biggest takeaways, I think, for me from this whole presentation. There seems to be a lot more of it. Again, did not play Dark Souls 3, but it seems to be like kind of everywhere and in everything, which I love, because these games are so well known for their really strict and punishing melee combat, but I like to kind of zhuzh it up, as it were, with a little bit of magic, which we're seeing here. So for instance, there's this kind of, I don't know if it's like a saber this guy's using, but he's kind of like throwing wind slashes, and you see another enemy kind of use a similar thing later on, but then also kind of doing like a backflip and then kind of teleporting or dashing really fast. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think that's so cool. I was like, because you're going to find weapons in this game that you're drawn to just normally, but then you might be like, oh man, but this weapon over here, like I can do this with, or maybe that's part of a skill tree. I don't know. Like, usually these games don't really have like skill trees like that. So I don't know if that's just, I would imagine that's part of like a weapon set. You know what I mean? But I thought that was so cool. And then after that, we get like there's kind of a roaming group that is walking around, and our protagonist summons a bunch of underlings. And I don't know if it's just based on like the previous guys he's killed, or, kind of different summons that you can acquire. I'm not sure. I think that's great. Kind of lowers maybe the intensity of these fights, and the skill ceiling is still going to be super high in this game, I think, no matter what. But I think for newcomers, something like that, and even for someone like me who's kind of not a newcomer, but also definitely not a veteran, can appreciate, where it's like, oh, cool. Now I don't have to worry about playing alone, because I can, once in a while maybe bust out a couple of my buddies and they can go fighting. It's kind of like in Diablo 3, they gave everybody summons. It's like, okay, yeah, even the barbarians like summoning stuff, which I just kind of appreciate. I think that's cool. And then we get into a little bit of co-op. I still need to know if this is cross-platform, because I've got friends out there who are probably listening to this, one in particular, Caden, hi buddy, who is like going to be on PlayStation, probably no matter what. And it's like, I just want to team up with people. And I hope that they really understand and make it less of a barrier for entry to do co-op. It always seems like such a weird chore, and I get it, because co-op can be a very powerful thing, but it's just one of those things where I hope we don't have to do this whole, like, do you have humanity, or I've got humanity, or like, we have to do all this like weird summoning stuff. Just like, can I just summon my friend? please. We don't need to make this so convoluted. But yeah, and besides that, they also mentioned that there will be player versus player, and then also invasions are still there too. So yeah, there's always that to consider. So if you summon your buddy in, somebody might also invade you, or somebody might invade you, and you don't have your buddy there either. I don't know, stuff like that happens. I had a moment in Dark Souls 2 where I invaded somebody else, and they were just standing by their bonfire, and I had to do it for a quest, or not like a quest, it was for an item, I think. And I killed him at his bonfire. Shouldn't have been standing there. Anyway. But yeah, I just think that's great. And I noticed here, and in some other portions of the video, there's a lot of like jumping up and jumping down. And I'm going to use their term here, but verticality, which a few years ago in the gaming world, it was being used constantly. Like, and I'm sure it still is used pretty frequently. It's like a ubiquitous term, but I still thought that was great to hear. And there does seem to be a lot of it. I'm sure there's still fall damage, right? But it looks like there is more kind of jumping up and down, and maybe just jumping in general. I don't know if they have a dedicated jump button, but it seemed a little bit more like there was more freedom to it. Because I know jumping in past Souls games has been not great. the platforming mechanics of these games are not stellar. I don't think they're supposed to be, but it can be so frustrating when you're just fighting the terrain and not only the monsters and everything in there. But I like to see that. I like to see that they're the verticality not only is in the open world, but also in the dungeons themselves, which we'll talk about here now. The dungeons, I think, I think this is what a lot of people were hoping for in Breath of the Wild. And I think that's a possibility in the future. What do I mean by that? I mean, like, when you play a Souls game, you also still want the classic Souls experience with the dark, scary hallways where things are jumping out at you, and there's limited mobility, and it makes these fights really intense, right? Same with Zelda. People still wanted like the classic dungeons versus just the physics-based things, that the little shrines that they had. And I totally understand that. But I like that the dungeons seem like they're kind of put there. I don't know how necessary they will be. It sounds like there's, extra bosses, maybe some other, gear and things like that you're going to go after in these dungeons, which is great. Especially if they're optional. I think that kind of stuff really helps, where if you're just like, I want to mainline it, you can totally do that. But if you want to explore and you come across a dungeon and you're like, oh, I went in here and I just got destroyed, then you can summon a buddy, that kind of stuff. And I just love to see that. I think that's a great thing. Along with the fact that if this is a truly open world game, in a lot of games like this, you will there'll be kind of a level gating kind of where you'll go into a zone you're not supposed to be in, and the enemies will be way stronger than you, and you can't do any damage to them, and they'll one-shot you or one-hit you or whatever. But I am hopeful that if that is the case, if they really do have that here, and you can kind of stealth around, and then, maybe approach a dungeon that is a higher level than you, but a buddy can help you out with it, or if there's some, they kind of sneak through the forest in one portion, and it's like, oh, these monsters are too strong, we're just going to try to sneak past them. I love that, because even with a friend, it was like, I don't think we should even tackle this right now. We'll go and we want to go after this boss instead. So I think that's great. I think that's really cool. And again, it makes it so much more dynamic versus it being like, oh, that level is down this corridor, down this tunnel, through these sewers, really hard to get to. It's just like, no, it's right over there. I can see it. It's just the last time I went over there, I got destroyed, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to come back there later. Which, again, more dynamic, I think that's great. And not to say that the other Souls games don't have branching paths and different routes that you can take, but they were so linear. Whereas this, to me, being so open, I think of all the cool possibilities and potential, and I think that's great. Then we approach Stormvale Castle, which, again, thinking more Breath of the Wild, reminds me a little bit, slightly, of Hyrule Castle, and how they kind of give multiple paths of entry. You talk to a guy right inside, and he's like, well, if you go down the main gate, I wouldn't recommend it. And you see all these bodies, and he starts getting attacked from a distance and goes the other way. And everybody knew that was what was going to happen. I still look forward to people who up their stats enough where they can either outrun the crossbow bolts or whatever, or just tank it with a shield and just walk forward, or snipe that guy or whomever's up there on the ballista, versus kind of sneaking in the back door. But they do talk about even there that there are multiple ways to kind of sneak into the castle or do things once you get inside. There's kind of oh, if you want to approach it this way, you can, or if you want to kind of sneak in this window or go over here. I love that. That's great. Again, I think that's something that these games were sorely missing, and that's where open world games such as Assassin's Creed, love it or hate it, had so much of an impact because of how you could approach everything. That kind of freedom to not climb, you're not going to, in these games, you're not going to climb up any building, but it looks like you have a lot more of that. And that's a much bigger focus in this game versus in the past where you'd look something up, or, someone would be like, hey, there's a secret way. If you jump over here and jump on this, then you can get in here, which I love. I love that there's this kind of, it makes you think in a different way, and it's going to make you find those secret paths, I think, more than you normally would, or at least for me. That's kind of what I'm thinking. kind of jumping back to the summons, we see it again here for a second, and this fight where this guy, our protagonist, uses an axe, and then he switches to like a halberd spear thing, and then to a sword, all in the same fight. But he kind of summons 3 skeletons to do one attack together, like a super attack, and I was like, oh man, so there's like, it seemed kind of necromancy-ish, right? Or is that necromantic? I don't know. Anyway, I thought that was great. I was like, oh man, yes, that's what I'm talking about. So like maybe there are summons you can have that kind of fight beside you for a period of time, and then other ones that you just summon once and they do an attack and then they go away. So that kind of attack or maneuver felt very much like something a boss would use on you in a previous game. And I just love to see that type of magic be afforded to the player. I have no idea how frequently you can use these things. Maybe that's a one and done. Maybe that's an item. I have no idea. But there's that. There's like this beautiful, gorgeous like arrow rain attack that you get to see the protagonist use on like the horse boss, or the knight, I should say earlier. Not a horse. He's on a knight. It's like a knight who's on a horse. There we go. With his friend, and his friend uses this, like, summons a dragon head and breathes fire, and then eventually this guy uses, like, a hyper beam, or a laser beam, or Samus's beam, or whatever the heck, or freaking Kamehameha, stuff like that, where I'm like, okay, now we're getting into more, like, I don't know, fantastical video game, like, worldy stuff, like, maybe, and for me, I'm a guy who usually prefers more of a power fantasy game, and I think eventually in Souls you get to that level, but it takes so long and can be so brutal to get there. Whereas this one, it seems like, and I could be way off on this, but it seems like they're giving you an edge in a way that you haven't had before. And I'm sure there are going to be purists out there who don't want to use this type of magic. And, you know, like in the Souls games, you are special, but also you're not. Like, you're the special undead who maybe will change things. But at the same time, you kind of get through fights through your own kind of vim and vigor, as it were. And you can definitely go down a magic path, but it seems like so much more in this. Like, not only do the enemies have some magic, but like you have some really, really big magic. Not just like, I'm gonna, you know, turn my sword red, which you do see in this one too, but kind of thing where it's like, okay, now we're getting somewhere, like, you know, that hyper beam thing. Like if you position that correctly, you might be able to take out a couple guys with that. Again, I don't know how frequently you can use it, but it was really flashy, and it was just nice to see that our character could be a little more flashy, as opposed to all the bosses having the spotlight. And that's another thing too. I thought even though the clipping is there, you still have your weapons clipped through your capes and stuff, I thought the outfits and the armor and stuff looked so good in this. I was like, wow, this looks great. Especially the lighting, when you see like them using the torch down in the tombs or the dungeon. I was like getting a little Dark Souls 2 vibe. I'm like, oh, there are the torches, you know. But yeah, that kind of stuff where I'm like, okay, now we're getting into something that is really compelling to me, something interesting to me. And again, if you're just going through there by yourself, I'm sure a lot of people want to do that, but I just think it'd be so much more fun with friends. And it's starting to get a little bit closer to that like hope I always had for Diablo, where it'd be like a third-person Diablo, and you'd be fighting alongside your buddies. Now, again, this is not like a power fantasy like Diablo in that way, like, because in that version, you'd be fighting thousands and thousands of creatures probably simultaneously, but this looked a lot more interesting to me than previous entries in the Souls kind of genre here. So yeah, those are my thoughts so far on this game. I thought it looked great. I'm really actually interested in it. I'm not sure if I will be there day one. I might be. I think it's really going to depend for me if other friends are playing it and there are other people I can talk to about it and stuff like that, because my gaming has become pretty social, like where if I'm going to play at all, I'm usually playing with friends or unless I'm streaming. So if you're watching this and you want to see me stream this, then let me know, because that helps me determine if I should use and allocate funds to it or not. But yeah, we also had some write-ins here from some of the Legionnaires that I wanted to bring up, because I wanted you guys to write in and tell me what you thought of it over on our Discord and on Twitter. If you guys ever want to shoot me anything, please do it over there. I'm at JimmyGood013. But the first one we got from Zora Caviar, aka Caden, who I mentioned earlier today. He said, first off, I asked people, what their input was and all their questions. And he said, weapons still clip into clothing, 0 out of 10. Just kidding. Or JK. He says, one thought that pops into my head. The way the dungeons are structured in this game is basically how I wanted them to be in Breath of the Wild. Hey, there we go. It'll be interesting to see if Breath of the Wild does dungeons and how they will compare to Elden Ring's dungeons. Ooh. He put a few questions in here too, but let me answer that first one. I think they'll still be physics-based to a degree, but I think they'll still have more of a classic vibe. There'll probably be less of them. There probably won't be a bunch of little ones in Breath of the Wild, but I would imagine they'll have more of that emphasis of like, there's a boomerang in here. You need it to defeat the whole place kind of thing. I would, or you get some new Sheikah Slate ability that you can only get in that dungeon. I wouldn't be surprised. Next question, or the questions he poses is this. I wonder if any of the overworld bosses are mandatory or if they are all optional. And he says, what treasures do they guard? Ooh, great questions. And then he says, is the pot man an actual animated pot or a man in a pot mech? Okay, lots of questions here. Okay, I think these might be rhetorical, but I still want to try to answer them. I'm guessing that most of those overworld bosses will be optional. And when they die, the treasure will just drop, whatever it is, whatever they have on them. Or it might be a map fragment or something that puts it on the map and is like, hey, like I found this thing on them after they died, and this is where their hideout is or whatever, or their castle or whatnot. That's a great question though. And then treasures of the guard, we kind of got that. And then he says, is Potman actually animated pot or a man in a pot mech? I think again that might be more rhetorical. I'm thinking animated pot though. That way they don't have to do any lip syncing. Which for the one guy, I talked to a few people. The lip syncing out of cinematics, still not a priority for From Software. And then he sent some more feelings after I kind of asked him a little bit. He said, between co-op and the new summoning mechanic for enemy spirits, I think this game might have the potential to be the easiest Souls game for newcomers. Just a theory, as we don't know exactly how co-op or the spirit system will work yet. Anyway, in my book, that's a good thing. Lower the barrier to entry, keep the skill ceiling high, attract new fans, everybody wins. I totally agree. I love it. Yeah, no, we don't need gatekeeping. Gatekeeping is the thing we see a lot in many facets of humanity, but it's like, no, we should all be able to enjoy games together. Nothing wrong with that. The J-Strum writes and he says, while I've never played a Souls game, I think this game looks pretty amazing, and I can't deny that I kind of want to play. So if there's any kind of setting that would get me to play this game, I think it looks pretty amazing. Bring forth the Elden Ring. Excellent. Cool. Well, there you go, guys. There's kind of my thoughts briefly on that, and your thoughts too. If you're listening to this on YouTube, please post your thoughts down below, what you think of it, good or bad or in between or whatever it might be. Or if you're listening to this anywhere else, like I said, you can tweet at me. I would honestly love to hear what you have to say, because I really do want to talk to people about it, because I think it's really fun for people who are longtime fans of the franchise. Like, what is in it that is like maybe new and compelling, or maybe kind of gives you pause, because I've noticed a few of the same, animations and audio moments, or I should say audio clips and things. So there's still that kind of Souls, undercurrent here for sure. But definitely maybe more of a focus on storytelling too. I don't know. George R. R. Martin's attached, and it looked like there's a lot more kind of stuff in the forefront of this game that I don't know, seems like a more brimming narrative, as it were. Like, you see like all these bodies kind of strewn about, and you're kind of like, oh, okay, what happened here? Again, not that Souls games haven't had that in the past, but it just looked more overt here, I think is the way I want to put that. Anyway, I want to move into that next segment of the show that I like to call, that you like to call, that we all like to call Time Killers. That's right. It's time for Time Killers. Yeah. I have been killing time with a few things here. It's been a few weeks, so let me just kind of briefly give you the rundown. I saw the Haunted Mansion Halloween special with the Muppets. Pretty good stuff. I really love Gonzo. And I also like John Stamos, who's in there for a bit. It was pretty neat. There was a lot of, obviously, references to Haunted Mansion. I was like thinking, well, they should do one on Pirates of the Caribbean, but they've already made Muppet Treasure Island. And Muppet Treasure Island's still my favorite, I think, of all of the Muppet movies I've seen so far. But it's pretty good. So if you like The Haunted Mansion or The Muppets or both, I would recommend checking it out. I also saw Dune in theaters. The theater I saw it in, though, we were sitting in the far back, and it was a smaller screen, so it wasn't like that true like Dune experience people were talking about. I thought it was a decent setup, beautiful visuals. The music was very loud. It's very Hans Zimmer-ish because it is Hans Zimmer. But it's very like sometimes it kind of pops up and it surprises you. But I'm really curious to see where it goes next because this felt very much like a movie that's teeing up the future. Although I think a lot of I don't know. I don't know what the consensus is on Dune right now. It seems like a lot of people are enjoying it, which is great. But I would love to hear from you guys what you think. But it's a very long movie, and if you liked Blade Runner 2049, same director, Denis Villeneuve, where I think it's very deliberately paced and very slow burn. So keep that in mind. This is not like an action-packed kind of feeling faster than it is movie. Like, for comparison, I think of other movies that kind of set up stuff in the future. And I think of, like, Lord of the Rings and Fellowship of the Ring. But that one moves so quickly, and there's so much that's happening, and there's so many different, characters you're meeting, and new locations and things. When it's done, you realize it was a long film, but you're also like, whoa, I want, like, the next part. This feels like they're just getting to, like, the really meaty stuff that's going to be coming up in the future. But it's also available on HBO Max, so you could watch it at home if you wanted to as well. But I kind of got invited to something, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll go out and see it in theaters. That'd be cool. I haven't seen a movie in theaters for a while. But also, I've been rewatching. I've gotten sucked back into My Hero Academia. I just finished up the most recent season, and I was like, I'll just pop back and maybe throw it on in the background and, do other things while I have this great anime on. And then I just get enamored and I'm gripped. I just stare at it. Like, there's nothing I can do when that show's on. I just have to watch it. It's that good. I think it's one of the greatest anime of all time. I love it so much. It speaks to me. I adore it. I adore it so much. And I've also been playing a lot of Battlefield 5, believe it or not. It was on Game Pass, and I was like, I think I played the beta, and I decided to kind of hop on and play through some of the campaign stuff, which was fun. And then I got my buddies to re-download it because they're like, why did we ever stop playing this? And we've been playing a lot of it. And it is fun. It can be very frustrating sometimes, just because tanks are really strong, as tanks are. But man, there's some people who've been playing this for a while, and they're very good. But yeah, I'm looking forward to Battlefield 2042. I think I might pick that up for streaming, just to play for you guys, and also to play myself. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that, and a bunch of other stuff like Halo Infinite's coming down the pipeline too. A very, very different first-person shooter, but still really, oh man, that game, from the beta I played, it was so great. And I'm gonna try Forza Horizon 5. Is it? The next Forza game's coming out right before this show. Or right as the show is coming out, basically. And I'm looking forward to trying that out and showing it off to you guys via the Game Pass. Man, the Game Pass is nuts. Oh my gosh. It's crazy. Anyway, I think that's pretty much everything I have for you guys this week. Thank you guys so much for understanding. I know the channel has been very hodgepodgey lately. A ton of Disneyland vlogs just because that's close. They're easier for me to do. And I've been working a bunch. So I appreciate it. This channel, man, it's all over the place, but I will continue to do the podcast. I'm going to try to get back onto a weekly schedule with this if I can. And please, please, please send in ideas, topics, even if it's stuff from the past. If I get like one or two people who like really want me to talk about something that came out a while ago or whatever else, please let me know. I need to get caught up on the Marvel Cinematic Universe because I've missed like the last like Shang-Chi and like Eternals is coming out, and I haven't. It's just like I don't know. I haven't seen any of this stuff. I feel bad. But I will watch Shang-Chi. I don't know what to say. I want to say Shang, but I think it's Shang. But either way, I heard that was a great movie, so I'm really excited to watch that. But yeah, please send in ideas if you have them. Also, a huge thank you to our patrons who make this show possible. You guys are fantastic. Thank you for supporting me. If you want, you're already supporting the channel just by listening. But if you want to support monetarily, you can check us out at patreon.com/criticalreviews. That'd be great. But if you want to support the channel in free ways, like just liking this or sharing this, truly, that's like a free way to do that and help out the channel. That helps a ton. But you can find me. I'm at JimmyGood013 on Twitter or at GoCritical. And yeah, I'm streaming over on Twitch. We've got merchandise. We got all that stuff down. The links on YouTube down below. But if you're just listening to this, then you can check out those things. Like I said, Twitter, YouTube channel, all that jazz. But yeah, I appreciate you guys listening in and just hanging out with me. It really does mean a lot. And I'm going to try to get more people to come on the show in the future. But right now, it's just been so hectic. So I was just like, I'll just try to pop on and, keep doing it, even if it's just me. But if you guys have any, wants for the future, not only for shows, but for guests, let me know. Either way, thank you guys so much for being here today. I hope you have a lovely rest of your week, weekend, day, night, whenever it is. And until next time, just remember to adapt and overcome.